or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to Two Guys from Verona with hosts Dan Perkins and Don Mazzella. Each week, they bring you their take on the world today. Dan Perkins is a financial expert, a regular columnist for the Hill website, best-selling author, and founder of a nonprofit foundation for our injured veterans. Don Mazzella brings his years of journalism experience and insights to the world today. He's a veteran newsman currently running a series of online newsletters and magazines, and is also a book author and on the board of the National Robotic Education Foundation. Together on each program, these men will provide thought-provoking ideas and commentary on what is happening politically, financially, and socially. They will also give listeners a heads up on future happenings. We start off each program with Dan Perkins' essay on what he considers an important issue facing us.
Good evening, Don. How are you?
Better than yesterday, worse than tomorrow.
All right. Today's the big day as far as the mini Super Tuesday.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, the polls will be closing while we're on the air tonight. I want to kind of raise a question that, ladies and gentlemen, Don and I have talked a little bit about format, and we're going to try and get more of an interaction between the two of us. So let me start off the first segment with a question, and it's not meant to be rhetorical, but the question is Hillary running out of gas, meaning physically, or is there something else going on? Let me give you 3 examples that I think that will help illustrate my point, and then Don, you can tell me what you think. After the Nancy Reagan funeral, Hillary spent quite a bit of time talking about the support that Ronald Reagan gave to gay and lesbian people when the AIDS virus broke out and people were dying and dying and dying. And she complimented Ronald and Nancy for their support of HIV victims. Well, the practical reality is nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, the gay community was so outraged because Ronald Reagan thought that the homosexual lifestyle was immoral and against his Christian beliefs. In addition, he also said, since we don't know how this disease is spread, I'm not so sure that we should have children who have HIV in our public schools. So she really had to back away from that in a hurry. Then last weekend, she was at a campaign stop, and she talked about how she was going to put miners and mining companies out of business to get rid of coal. And yet the miners are a very powerful union, have been a big supporter of the Democratic Party, so they're enraged. And then last night, probably the most telling comment was she was on a town hall, and she said that in speaking of Middle East policy when she was Secretary of State, and more specifically about Libya, she said that no Americans died when she was on as Secretary of State. And not many news organizations picked up on that, but Fox did and was asking the question all day, what about the 4 people, the ambassador and the 3 other people that were murdered when she stood over the coffins? So I guess my question to you, Don, is what else is going on with Hillary other than what they're now calling political gaffes in great succession?
Well, that's funny. If you remember with President Reagan, whenever he did a gaffe like that, they blamed it on old age. Mm-hmm. And if you remember when they finally, after he left the presidency, diagnosed him with Alzheimer, people started to question whether it hadn't started while he was in the White House or even before. But it's interesting. After we talked, Dan, I went back to kind of research a little bit about Ronald Reagan. And don't forget, he had a gay son, number one. 2, over the 8 years that he was in office, he changed fairly substantially when it came to AIDS and AIDS research and everything else. And by the end of his administration, you could say very definitely that he had a different outlook. And if you read some of his material writings afterwards, he also believed that. But putting that aside, you're absolutely right. There is something going on with Hillary Clinton. Now, the argument can be made: does she really care what she says, and does she believe that people will just pass over it, as indeed they apparently have? Because after 9 hours of testimony and before Congress, and she said, "Well, what difference does it make?"
Right.
That has not resounded in the media. No one has brought it up. Bernie Sanders didn't even bring it up, even though he started to attack. So I think there are people smarter than me with a better medical background that think there is some things wrong with Hillary Clinton health-wise, and maybe simply her brain gets tired after all this campaigning, because don't forget, she is campaigning almost 16 hours a day at times. And unlike President Reagan's handlers, she doesn't sit down and rest when they tell her to, but rather continues to go on. So we have some real concern. I also have great concerns with how the media is treating it, but I'll turn that back to you.
Yeah, that's a good point. I looked at, as I said, the only place I could find anybody talking about this was on Fox, was the only people reporting it, and I had to do all kinds of crazy searches to try and find anything on the internet. What concerns me is that if you're right, and I agree with you, I'm in the same position. Well, I had a very, very, very good longtime friend who got dementia and then later Alzheimer's and passed away at a relatively young age. I've had some firsthand experience. I'm not a doctor. But I looked at, for example, I also did some additional research, and Uma, in the emails that were uncovered by the State Department that she had to turn back, there are numerous emails by her where she's quoting that Hillary doesn't seem to be focused. They have to help her. You're talking about she's campaigning. I would suggest to you that the campaigning for president in the fall election is going to be more tiring and debilitating than running in the primaries over this 8 to 9 month period. Remember, as much as we want to talk about Bernie as a challenger, there's been no real challenge to her from an intellectual standpoint on the issues from Bernie. When she gets into a presidential election and she has to face whoever it's going to be, who's going to be aggressive about her, and I said to you, I fully expect that comment that she made last night on video is in the archives, and it will come out in the presidential election. And I just think that the news media is very much afraid to even report this story because it's leading to a conclusion that they don't want to have even discussed about Hillary.
Well, if this were President Reagan running or a Republican, you could rest assured it would be all over the media about this. And by the way, just as a side note, did you know today that a study came out that says if you use maple syrup regularly, you stave off the onset of dementia? It's a new study that just came out today, so maybe we should all send
Did it come from the maple sugar growers? Is that where it came from?
It's a official study, but the point is maybe we should all send their maple syrup as a get well gift.
So now price will have to go up because now it's a pharmaceutical.
Well, no, you're right. But there was something else she said last night that I found interesting. She said on her town hall that she had gotten more votes than any other presidential candidate in the primaries. And I went back and checked. And the only reason that it even she even comes close to that is if you count the various elections where she ran unopposed. But I hear the music. Let's go to a break and then we'll talk further.
You're listening to Two Guys from Verona with Dan Perkins and Don Mazzella.
That worked well.
Hey, Dan,
Yeah.
real quick, give me a little tap on that microphone right there. Okay, it's working. So do me a favor, maybe stay a little bit closer because it sounds like you're getting a little roomy.
Okay, I'll move it in for me.
Cool.
Okay.
Find
Perfect.
senior care for someone you love. That's why I recommend a free
So are
service.
you pleased with that, Mr. Mozilla?
The nation's largest
Oh, I was.
Okay, good.
You're better at it, Dan.
place for
You
mom.
can get all your points across.
Free information on senior living communities in your area. Call A Place for Mom.
I know you like to have things buttoned down, but I think after all these years, we've worked together.
Yep, that's true. That's true. Well, I was comfortable with it. I didn't have a problem. I rolled right with it.
Okay. So now the next one we're going to do is the media.
Freedom of speech.
Mm-hmm.
You're leading that one. One other comment about the video we didn't talk about this afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
She said, my publicist said, both of you guys could smile a little more. Don't take yourself so serious.
Ironically, that's what my friend said today.
Smile a little more.
No, I don't. Yeah, I always have this cheese-like smile, unless I'm really genuinely. What we're talking about is really serious stuff.
Right.
Chad, are we still on?
Oh, yeah. What do you mean? Are you still on?
We're waiting for the commercial.
Oh, yeah. We're
I'm not hearing the commercial. That's what I was saying. Meant.
Yeah, we're about ready to come back. We only got about 10 seconds left in the spot.
Okay, good. Thank you.
So here we go. Plugging you back in.
How you can help, go to our website at songsandstoriesforsoldiers.us. Help us to help a veteran make it through the night.
Welcome back. You're listening to Two Guys from Verona. Once again, here's your hosts, Dan Perkins and Don Mazzella.
Well, Don, it's your turn.
I was going to say, the past week we've had these semi-riots at the various Donald Trump events, etc. And we've learned in recent days that they were all staged by Move On, that notorious organization that in a time when Joe McCarthy was around they would have called communist, but in this day and age we now call them activists.
Right.
It's a very interesting thing. But I feel very strongly, and I think Donald Trump said it best, his freedom of speech is being impinged by these people who are coming in and trying to get him to end his various programs. I think it's a serious thing that all Americans should be concerned about, because if you silence it, we've been experiencing this, as you know, on college campuses around the country where people simply are disrupting speakers they feel are speaking, saying something that they don't want to hear. It's ironic. Freedom of speech means that you listen to all sides, that you have the right to speak, and that the media is, in my opinion, not doing a disservice to not only Donald Trump, but to free speech in general, because what they're doing is saying Move On, which is deliberately doing this, is somehow equal in blame to Donald Trump, who they say is trying to incite it by words. Well, words are one thing, but actions are another. And all Donald Trump is doing, in my opinion, is saying what a lot of Americans are thinking. And for the first time, they have someone articulating what they're thinking. And Move On, and the people who surround them, Soros, etc., are not happy because, like the boy who pointed out that the emperor had no clothes, if you destroy this artificial web being woven around the various um, activities aimed at stopping some of these things, we're in trouble. I'd like to leave it at that. What do you think, Dan?
Well, my sense is I have a couple of points for you. One, I think that what we have is a situation where the MoveOn.org, which also spun off Black Lives Matter and the Wall Street deal, they don't believe in the First Amendment, freedom of speech. They think that the First Amendment needs to be repealed. In fact, on O'Reilly some months ago, Waters went out to several Ivy League colleges and talked about signing a petition to abolish the First Amendment. And he got hundreds of signatures in a very short period of time. The idea that the college students at some of these great seats of knowledge don't even understand the Constitution and don't understand that in the First Amendment you have the freedom of religion, but you also have the freedom of press, you have the freedom of assembly, and you have the freedom of petition. MoveOn.org and these other organizations want to get rid of the First Amendment because you don't believe what they believe, you must be silenced. And so that's what they did in Chicago, as you pointed out. They took away Trump's right to speak and his free speech. But there's another twist to that, which I think is insane. We had a situation where after the riots in Chicago, after the speech was canceled, we had Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, and John Kasich of Ohio all saying that Trump and his rhetoric was responsible for the outbreak of the violence. And I'm reminded of our president, who has spoken out about Ferguson, who's spoken out about Baltimore and other things without having all of the facts. Trayvon Martin, making a decision based on his own intellect, his own emotions and feelings without facts. Here we had the three contenders trying to blame Donald Trump for the actions of MoveOn.org. But when they opened their mouths and accused Trump, MoveOn.org had not spoken that they were responsible for the activity. And so what I'm saying is that I think that the three other candidates, and I heard today some of the exit polls that came out of Florida, that people who were up until this past weekend undecided broke dramatically for Trump because of the situation in Chicago and the personal attack on him in Dayton. We had a situation where Trump was, this guy broke through the Secret Service line and was approaching the stage. And what I thought was amazing about the video, Don, was that Trump didn't cower. He didn't try and hide behind a Secret Service person. He stood his ground. And my guess is if he'd have got on the stage, I really believe that Trump would have probably taken a punch at him. So there's obviously...
If he had taken a punch at him, he would have won the election.
Oh, yeah, going away. And so the idea that this whole issue of freedom of speech, again, I wonder, you and I talked a long time ago about, we keep talking about this election being an election about not you and I, but people talking about this being an election that will determine whether or not the Republican Party will survive. I think it also may be an election whether or not the Democratic Party, as we know it, will survive.
Well, you bring up an interesting point.
That's what I'm paid for.
The two things I wanted to say. One, you're very right about Florida, especially in Florida. The tide really turned for Donald Trump on that, according to what my sources say within, not his camp, another camp, that after that, the tide really turned. But I'd like to say something else. If this election, and we've been saying for a long time, is one of the most crucial in American history, and we're going into it, if you assume that it's Hillary Clinton and you assume it's Donald Trump, we will have two of the most, I hate to say it, least prepared people running for president. Someone said that no one's ever prepared to be the president, but some are more than others. And in this case, if Donald Trump comes in, he's got a whole new set of problems to solve. And I think it's ironic that his new best buddy is Chris Christie here in New Jersey. I mean, if you saw them, the two of them on the stage together,
Right.
it was. I have to tell you something. About 5 years ago, Chris Christie spoke at our when he was a new governor, spoke at our club, the Union League Club in New York, and front and center was Donald Trump, acting as if he was his boy. And now, 5 years later, we're seeing that maybe he was his boy. I don't know, Dan. I think we're facing real challenges to what you and I know as the American Constitution and the American way of life.
Right.
There's a new book out about the first Congress, in which the Bill of Rights was passed and other things. And in fact, one of the things that came out of it was the fact that the amendments only happened to come out that way by accident. They could have been done differently. They wanted 10, but they in no particular order. But it is important, I think, that we're talking about the First Amendment, mostly because it is the most crucial.
Yeah, and yet Second Amendment seems to getting some play because people are still talking about guns and violence and the shooting of policemen. And you know, it's our country. As much as I hate to say it, Don, I think our country's gotten out of hand. The apathy in which the president has been running the country for the past 7.5 years has worked its way down to the individual citizen who doesn't really care about the country. You know, I'm reminded, I wrote a piece not too long ago when I talked about this apathy, and I said when John Kennedy was inaugurated president, he said, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. And I think if he were making that speech today, he would be asking, what can your country do for you, not what you can do for your country. It's gone that way all the way back to a situation where we have a huge number of people who are depending upon the government and have forgotten how to depend upon themselves. And as a result, there is chaos running everywhere. There's no order, there's no sequence, there's no value. And as you and I talked not too long ago, you wonder where God is. But it looks like the clock's telling us we've got to have another break here coming up. So we'll continue as soon as this break's over. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Two Guys from Verona with Dan Perkins and
There you go, fellas. You're clear.
back after these messages.
Are we hitting our marks?
You are.
Yeah,
No,
you hit it dead on.
I think I was a little behind there.
Okay, Dan, what are we going to talk about in the third segment?
Well, you got here about penny wise and pound foolish as it relates to pharma. We can certainly do that if you want.
I put that in because I couldn't remember, Dan.
Well, that's one of the things we can talk about. The other thing is we don't want to talk about the election anymore.
No.
We do want to talk about, you know, it's interesting that Putin has decided that he's going to begin to moving his primary forces out of Syria because he believes the peace talks are going well.
No, he's doing that because he's losing troops at a far higher rate than he thought.
Well, that's my point. I would like to throw that to you, and you can comment on the coming back that no, it's not because these things are going well. It's because he's losing troops.
No, as someone said, he's avoiding the eastern quagmire.
Well, on top of that,
Service
it's
called-
costing him a huge amount of money to maintain that military, and this is not a place where he has money because he's not generating any revenue from oil.
Yeah.
Receive free information on senior
So you
living
want to try that?
in your area.
Why not?
Place Mom at 1-800-750-6128.
A Place for Mom offers free one-on-one advice
Ironically,
advisors.
other thing on marijuana,
List of senior living
Canada
can visit.
just authorized a new study
Senior care
for first responders to using marijuana to help them relieve their
10 minutes, get your free book on financing
Post-traumatic stress.
PSTS.
free
Right.
information
PTSD.
But
communities
Yeah.
in your area.
Here we go,
Call
coming back.
1-800-750-6. That's 1-800-750-6128.
Welcome back. You're listening to Two Guys from Verona. Once again, here's your hosts, Dan Perkins and Don Mazzella.
Well, I'm gonna throw my friend a little curve. We were talking about something in the break that we might put in, but I think since we've got an expert here, we should probably deal with it. We've been talking earlier in the day about what's going on in various states around the country trying to legalize medical marijuana, and what's going on in Colorado and California and Oregon. And Don sits on a board of a nonprofit that grows marijuana in New Jersey. So give us an update of what's going on in New Jersey and what's happening in the rest of the country, Don.
Well, thanks for the plug. There's three things that happened today that have been reported. One, the federal FDA is poised to approve a cannabis-based drug for the first time. What it means is that doctors will be able to prescribe this drug. And it won't be over the counter, but it will be prescribed by doctors. And it's the first time that the FDA has, in almost 50 years, has authorized a cannabis or marijuana-based drug. I think that's a major breakthrough, because one thing it does do, in a sense, it violates federal law, because you cannot ship cannabis or medical marijuana across state lines, and this is going to happen. So that's going to force, in the next Congress, real thought about changing federal law. Right now, we have 25 states that permit some form of dispensing of marijuana. Obviously, the three biggest states are Colorado, California, and Oregon, where it's pretty much a wild frontier, where a lot of things are happening. It's free in Colorado and Oregon, and with very little restraint in California. In New Jersey, we happen to have the tightest restrictions on dispensaries, which have to be, by the way, nonprofit. And I also have to tell you one thing. Having been involved and treasurer of it, marijuana by itself is a very, very lucrative business. Even though it's ironic, it's legal in the United States to grow it, but it's illegal to sell it. And if you grow it, that's the ironic part. So it's really funny.
It's like the stores on the beach at Myrtle Beach who sell thousands and thousands of fireworks. You just can't shoot them off because it's illegal to shoot them off at Myrtle Beach. But you can buy them by the truckload. You just can't shoot them off. Let me ask you a question. Under the thing that you heard about the FDA, would it be a controlled substance drug?
Very much. It would be very much a controlled substance. But the law explicitly states that you cannot prescribe a drug that has that's a base is cannabis, but the TH, so-called TH.
Let me ask you another question. You sit on the board of a nonprofit that's actually growing cannabis in New Jersey.
And dispensing it too.
Right. Why is it a nonprofit?
Because that's the way the law was set up. We theoretically can take in the money, but we can't make a profit off it. We have to devote the excess money to research, which we do. In other words, and we by the way, can't issue stock. We can't do any number of things that are profit making. We all expect within the next 3 years the state of New Jersey will change that, and we will be able to go to a profit. And when we do, we'll be able to throw off a lot of cash, because right now we're limited to just one location to dispense it. Mm-hmm. And where we dispense it is where we have to grow it. It's very restrictive. Unlike Colorado, where they even use vending machines to sell marijuana. It's a whole different world.
So are we talking that in Colorado, Oregon, and California, the drug is being distributed by for-profit organizations?
Absolutely. Absolutely. But however, they're denied access to the banking system except by deposits of cash. For instance, you cannot buy cannabis legally using your credit card. So all of these dispensaries, ourselves included, end up with large amounts of cash. Some places as much as 100, and don't laugh at this figure, $100,000 a day in cash.
Well, I would see that in Colorado. It would the investment manager in me is saying to myself, "Gee, if Don's right that this becomes a deregulated industry, meaning for-profits can sell it, there's going to be an opportunity for somebody to make a lot of money, in addition to the ones in California, Oregon, and Colorado."
Oh, absolutely. By 2020, it should be a $40 billion business in the United States.
Has your board talked about the possibility of what would you do if it became a for-profit business?
We can't talk about that. Or specifically, New Jersey also has laws about going from a nonprofit to a profit, which make it very onerous. When our healthcare companies went from nonprofit to profit, it took a tremendous amount of effort, work. And for instance, the ironic part is we as board members could not receive any compensation for going from a nonprofit board to a profit board. Nor can we, I'm told, I haven't heard this officially yet, nor could we sit on the new board. So for us, it's a no-win. If we on the board do it because what's missing in all of the discussion is the fact that marijuana does help in certain cases. In fact, today, just before we went on the air, Canada has just authorized a study for marijuana for its first responders because many of them suffer from post-traumatic stress disorders. Having been a first responder, you see a lot of things in life that people should not see. So they're going to test cannabis as a way of easing these stresses. There's another study, the drug that I was mentioning that we're going to permit in the United States reduces seizures in children. It's a wonderful drug. In the test, it's reduced it by 3 times, from 17 reductions from 17 to 33%. It's the first one that seems to have been working in about 10 years. I know you do a lot more of this than I do, particularly for your investment, but it really my mother's turning over in her grave because she never liked marijuana. But as a tool for medicine, and by the way, Big Pharma will be in it they're already sniffing around. If you go to
no pun intended.
Very good. Okay, now I can laugh. Okay. If you go to the various marijuana conventions, business, you'll always see the pharma representatives of the pharmaceutical companies. In fact, we have one on our board because there are things. Don't forget, when you smoke marijuana, you only take about 10% of the effectiveness. If you extract it and put it into a pill, you bring it up to 70 or 80%. And that's where the future of this. Concentrated, you know what it is. Doctor knows how to prescribe it. There's a lot to be said for it, and there's a lot to be said against it. I just finished a paper with one of the leading advocates against marijuana, medical marijuana. We did a joint paper discussing why I thought it was good and why he thought it was bad. And it does have bad effects. the number of accidents involving marijuana in Colorado has nearly doubled since the start of these various things.
But that's free. That's free and open use. It's not just medical marijuana. It's recreational marijuana. It's whatever you want.
Yeah, whatever you want. You're supposed to have a doctor's prescription, but it's it's irrelevant because they get around it in so many different ways. The real thing that's going to happen is end of life. Here in New Jersey, end of life use of medical marijuana, which is interesting because we're the generation, at least I'm the generation, I won't include you, where marijuana.
You're much older than I am.
I know. But when we were young, we thought of marijuana as bad. But yet, a third of our patients are end-of-life patients, older, who have adopted medical marijuana because it eases the pain at end of life. And I think that's the fact that they're willing to try it, and once they try it, to stay on it, says something about its effectiveness. And we should we could go on and on. I'm dominating the conversation. I don't mean to, but what is happening is, and in just the 4 years I've been on the board, I've seen a major change in how people view marijuana and drug use.
I think different generations. I think our generation, as you pointed out, sees it one way. Our children see it in a totally different way. And they're obviously entitled to their opinions, as we are. But I'm not convinced that it's the miracle drug that a lot of people are talking about. And I'm concerned that the opiate nature of the drug is eventually going to create a society that not only kills its young in abortion, but drugs up its next generation to prevent them from actually functioning and making things better for themselves and for the next generation.
Well, you're right there. I do not believe in recreational marijuana. I mean, I'm opposed to it. I happen to be in a minority, according to polls here in New Jersey. But everything you said is absolutely right, Dan. I worry about that. We worry about the next generation. I'm sure our parents worried about us, and their parents worried about them. But I think that the generation that's coming up has some serious obstacles to being a generation that was better than the previous one.
Yeah, there are some people who are openly concerned, young people, millenniums as they're called, who are concerned that they really are beginning to believe that the opportunity for them is dramatically reduced compared to their parents' opportunity when they were coming out of school. The tremendous cost for college and the lack of jobs, which is what we'll talk about that in a little bit in the next segment. But I really think that there is a thirst for something positive in our country, and in many cases, young people have turned to drugs to find that solace that they've been looking for, as opposed to looking within themselves and deciding what they want to do with the rest of their lives. And with that, we need to take another break, and we'll be back in a few seconds.
You're listening to Two Guys
Right,
Dan Perkins and Don Mazzella. They'll be right back after a word from their sponsors.
That was good.
Are you worried about your mom or dad living alone?
Well, that's why I brought you on.
Hi, I'm Joan London. Listen, I know.
It's interesting that these three things came together
Someone you love.
today. I mean, the Canadian one just came across my desk.
For Mom. They are the nation's largest senior living referral service. Call a place for Mom today.
So we're gonna have a good
communities in your area
8 to 9 minutes.
at
The last segment.
1-800-50-6128.
We can fill it.
A Place for Mom offers free one-on-one advice from local advisors and a personalized list of senior living communities you can visit. If you have questions about senior care for your mom or dad, there's a place for answers, a place for mom.
Call a place for mom in the next 10 minutes to get your free ebook on financing senior care as well.
You go first with your.
Fees in your area. Call 1-800-750-6128. That's 1-800-750-6128.
The Brotherhood of the Red Nile, America Responds. This is the final installment of the Brotherhood trilogy, and over this series we've been attacked by terrorists using weapons of mass destruction and have begun to rebuild America from all the destruction. In the last book, America Responds, the Pathfinders have been charged to find the Brotherhood. Just as they're ready to close in and capture the Brotherhood, the president tells them just follow them. The president develops a plan of attack not just on the Brotherhood, but on terrorists worldwide. Will the president's plan work? Will the Pathfinders succeed? Find out in the final book of the Brotherhood trilogy, The Brotherhood of the Red Nile, America Responds. For more information, go to www.danperkins@sanibel.com. That's www.danperkins@sanib.com. Dan Perkins' new book, also available at Amazon.com.
In this final segment, Don and Dan offer their predictions on what's going to happen in our world.
Well, before we get to that, Don, I think we got to do a couple of housekeeping things. One, we encourage you to go to our website, twoguysfromverona.com, and let you know that starting next week, you're going to be able to call in and speak with us directly. That call-in number is 561-623-9429. We'll repeat that again at the end of the at the end of the show, and it'll be on the website. What I want to do is in the last segment is talk about, not specifically about Trump or the Democrats or the particular Republicans, but the dialogue that's going on right now in this country of the possibility of a brokered convention or a contested convention. I will tell you, yesterday I had lunch with a group of gentlemen that I played golf with in the morning, and one of them said his wife is a resident from Ohio. I never understood this, and he's a resident of Florida, but she was voting for Kasich in Ohio, and he was going to vote for Rubio in Florida. And I remembered that you and I had this discussion on our other two guys on Tuesday afternoon at 5. I had suggested to you some time ago that remember that when Jeb Bush announced that he was going to run for president, he said, I believe I can get the nomination. Didn't say win it. He said, I get the nomination regardless of whether I win a primary. Today, and I've been warning people in my columns and other commentary, that if we have a brokered conventions, the people who will broker the convention are the Republican leadership who is middle of the road, and they're going to be looking for a candidate because they don't want Trump and they don't want Cruz. Kasich is not strong enough to carry. So I think, and I've said all along, that I think that Bush is just sitting there waiting for a brokered convention for the Republican leadership to come up to him and ask him to save the party, which he won't be able to. But this afternoon, after the 2 o'clock hour on Rush, he today, for the first time, suggested that if it goes to a brokered convention, the leadership of the Republican party will go to Jeb Bush. And I think if we can't allow the electoral process to work, the other thing that you and I talked about this afternoon in this same vein, Marco Rubio and John Kasich yesterday announced that they're rethinking their pledge that they made to support the nominee. And they did that at the last Fox News debate when Brett Baer asked them, would you support the nominee of the Republican Party, even if it was Donald Trump? They all said yes. When Kasich and Rubio said that they were rethinking their promise, they basically have said exactly what the American people are so angry about, because the leadership is saying, well, we're going to do one thing, and they turn around and do something else. I think it would blow apart the Republican Party. What do you think?
Well, don't forget, the primary system as we know it today is only 20 years old. and I don't think it's done a very good job of picking the nominees. If you go back, and by the way, just to point out something, Woodrow Wilson sat in Long Branch, New Jersey, and a brokered convention came to him. If you, well, I don't think you'll remember that far back, but
I wasn't alive, but you were. Were you in the chair next to him?
No, but anyway, the point I'm making is I don't think the primaries are necessarily the voice of the American people. That's another canard that we're throwing out and about around here. I think it's far more democratic, but I happen to be a believer in the old. There's a song from Fiorello, the Broadway play called "Politics and Poker," in which the politicians get together to figure out who to make the nominee. And I sometimes think that they did a better job of it than.
Wait a minute. Are you trying to tell me that John McCain and Mitt Romney were a better choice?
Oh God, no! But don't forget.
But they had the support of the leadership because they were mainstream. They were milquetoast. The whole problem with Mitt Romney when he opened his mouth 3 or 4 weeks ago, everybody in the United States, where the hell were you in 2012?
He should have said all of those things. I couldn't agree with you more. But I'm not, like I say, I don't think for the past 20 years the primary system has served this country well, either for the Republicans or the Democrats. We've certainly not brought out the best of people in terms of the presidency.
So how would you change it?
How would I change it?
How would you select the nominee for the Republican or Democratic Party different than what we're doing today?
Well, the political parties are splintered. They're not run. By men. For instance, here in New Jersey, the Democratic Party is pretty much run by 3 men, and no women, by the way. 3 men who are concerned with just one thing: getting a candidate elected. Not worried about whether they're right, left, blue, black, orange, or whatever, but more worried about getting elected. Having said that, and I have to backtrack and say one thing, I read someplace where since President Obama has been president, the Democratic Party has lost almost half of its state and local seats.
We got 1 minute. Go ahead.
Well, no, I'm just going to say
go finish.
I prefer the old brokered convention. I remember going to the 1964 Republican convention and then the 64 Democratic convention. And believe me, they were a lot more fun than this convention was. And leading up to it was a much more fun, even though in 64 we were suffering the loss of JFK.
Are we going to have a brokered Republican convention?
I said it, 5 or 6 months ago? I still believe it, and I still believe that Hillary Clinton will not be the presidential nominee of the Democratic Party. I may have to eat my words, but I still believe it.
And I was at a conference on Sunday night where the guy said what you said. She may not be the nominee, but on the wall next to the desk where she's not going to sit is an alarm, fire alarm, and when you open the chamber, it's a picture of Joe Biden, who's going to come in and save the day.
As you call him, Uncle Joe.
Uncle Joe is going to come in and save the day.
And Pocahontas.
Right, and believe me, when he talked about the possibility that Hillary might add Pocahontas as her running mate, it got great applause. Anyway, we're just about out of time. Remember, next week you can call us at 561-623-9429, and the website is Songs and Stories. The website is twoguysfromverona.com. And if it's important to you, it's important to us. Good night, Don.
Good night.